Hi, my name is Brooke. I'm a News 6 producer, and I'm also the writer for the Setting the Stage newsletter. And today we have an interesting guest with us. We have Dr. Kian Vu from Squid Game, The Challenge, a reality show on Netflix. I'm a big fan of. Thank you for joining us and reaching out to us so we can learn more about behind the scenes what goes on. Because watching the show, I just have so many questions. So is it okay if it's okay with you? I'm first going to start off with how did you get on the show?
Well, how I got on the show was just quickly chance. This was a show that myself and my fiance were watching the original Squid Game, and there was
Mm-hmm.
an open casting call last year, and I responded to a open casting call message sometime in the summer, thinking it wasn't going to happen. And then a couple months later, when I was walking off stage doing a keynote presentation, I get a call from WhatsApp from a producer at the UK saying they wanted me on the show.
Wow. And so, like, since you watched the show, I just have to know, once you got there, was it like kind of creepy and eerie, like how much it looked like the actual TV show?
I was blown away by the set. I was blown away by the entire experience. Anybody that's in the show actually recognized that this was truly an immersive experience, and they really didn't spare any attention to detail because from the food we ate to the bunk beds to the lights in the room to all the details in every single set was just so done with detail to match the original show was an amazing experience to be in.
All right. So, what was the set like? Were you in an actual building or were you going from set to set?
So the set was pretty amazing. Where we were at was actually the dorm room. That was one set that never really changed. Um, Outside of after coming back into the challenges, the bunks were moved. So we had the main set, and right outside were different little tiny sets. One where you saw the artistic staircase. Another one was for the game of Dalgona or the cookie game. And then there were other sets outside the main dorm that kept swapping out, but we had the main set that everybody was staying in the dorms.
Wow. And so tell us about the challenges you participated in because I've read different things that like sometimes the challenge seemed 20 minutes, but it was really 6 hours. So tell us about what it was like filming.
Well, filming the challenges was actually no walk in the park. Everything that looked like it was only 5 or 10 minutes on camera or in the final product actually took hours to film. For example, red light, green light was a 5 minute challenge on television. However, that challenge took anywhere from 7 to 8 hours to shoot. People thought you were going to pause for only 30 seconds up to a minute or something like that. But no, people actually had to hold their positions for up to 15 to 45 minutes at a time. So if you were in a position that was really hard to hold, you were probably going to give up. This is why up to 279 players got eliminated after that first challenge.
Not gonna lie, I feel like I would probably flinch like once that thing exploded in your chest. Did that happen to some people?
Certainly, there was a lot of distractions. You had guards in the air. Every time we froze, you had drones actually fly in to take a look as to whether or not people actually flinched or moved. So it was very distracting and probably very difficult to hold still the entire 45 minutes, which is probably why you saw so many eliminations.
Wow. Okay. And so how did the show, I know like you talked a little bit about how do you feel like the show mirrored real world challenges?
The show mirrored real world challenges in that you place people in an environment where there is a limited resource, such as one cash prize. What do people do there? How do people start to form alliances? Human behavior. What happens under stress? These are things that we typically find in the workplace, in our families, in our communities, where we have to work together to solve problems, or do we get into the stress mode where we're not showing up as ourselves and make decisions that are not aligned with our highest self, not only as individuals, but as a community? I saw that play out in the games quite a bit.
Wow, that makes sense. And I have to know, like, watching this show, not gonna lie, it looks like you guys are like basically signing up to be in a prison. Okay, there's no windows. Do you know what time of day it is? Like how you're eating the same food, you're all wearing the same outfits. Like, tell me about the conditions of being on the show.
The show is truly an immersive experience. You basically were in the dorms, and in between going to the games, you were just in the dorms. This would be for hours and hours and hours waiting for food, which was probably not the very best food, very bland tasting, probably nutrient poor food. There was no clocks on the wall, so you had no idea what time it was. Whether it was sunlight or dark, you had no idea because we were just exposed to the fluorescent lamps of the show. And throughout the time, we actually had to almost come up with things to kind of keep us going, to keep our spirits up. So yes, it was very, very much like a prison being in there.
Yeah, I saw like throughout different challenges, people playing games in the background. Ultimately, like how long were you there, and do you know how long like even the final three have been there?
So after I got eliminated, I was probably in the dorms itself from 5 to 6 days or so. Prior to the show, we were flown to England in a hotel room, and there we were waiting for a couple of days in quarantine before the show started. So I was probably there anywhere for 10 to 12 days. The people that made it to the end probably stayed an extra week.
So did it feel like 5 to 6 days to you, or did it feel like longer than that because of everything happening?
I would probably say because the experience was so new and because we got a chance to get to know and really truly connect with people, I found that time flew by very, very quickly because when I was there, I was leading breathwork practices. I was leading people to elevate their state, and I was really forming deep connections with people to get to know them better. And that really made the time fly by really fast for me.
Well, I could definitely see how that would happen. And so you talked a little bit about mental health. What was the mindset like? I'm not going to lie, I've noticed like a lot of people crying. And from a viewer, it makes it seem like they're crying just about getting in line, for the cookie challenge. But I'm sure there's just like a lot more going on, and that's why people are getting so stressed out and overwhelmed.
Well, certainly the challenge itself really tested human behavior. What would people do under extreme stress? What if you were given a challenge where your own well being had to be compromised in order to survive? So, all these things played out. Now, when you take away good sleep, when you take away sunshine, good food, nutrition in an environment where people aren't used to working out or moving their bodies, they're going to be at a place where they're going to be more in fear and survival mode. Then you throw on top of that the challenges that you have to make. One, eliminate a player. Two, make a decision for the entire group whether or not they get like a tough cookie challenge or not. All these things add additional stress to people. And here's the thing, what we do know is if we don't work on the basics, if we don't work on good nutrition, movement, sleep, really monitoring our thoughts and our emotions, this is one of the things I help people elevate while we were on the show. You're going to be choosing and showing up as a version of yourself that you might not be proud of. You'll be operating in fear and survival mode rather than in your true authentic mode, which I believe is the vibration of love.
Yeah, that makes sense because I hear a lot of reality stars like they get a lot of backlash for the decisions they make during the show. So hearing you talk about like how stress like adds to your decision, that makes a lot of sense. Um, like I noticed like since you said you were leading breath work, I found it interesting that like you did come out as a leader, and people saw that as a threat, and that ultimately got you eliminated. So what are your thoughts on how that happened?
Well, I think anytime you put yourself out there, you're going to be a target in these shows. And I didn't watch Survivor, and I'm not really a big reality show watcher. And at the moment I got eliminated, I realized, wow, I'm actually in a reality show. But I had a very clear mission when I came in. I wanted to change the narrative on this one prize and this one item that everybody fights for. Because in the long run, if we have one prize and everybody fights for it, even if you win that prize and you have to destroy or backstab people along the way, people aren't going to be left better off without it. And the person who wins probably isn't left better off backstabbing or behaving in a way that isn't good for the entire whole. So for me, I didn't make any alliances. What I did was I tried to elevate everybody, led people to breathwork sessions, did coaching sessions, and just try to elevate people. Because here we have this one prize. If we could elevate the entire collective, even if you get eliminated, if somebody poured into you while you were on the show, and if you were uplifted on the show, you would leave the show better. So I wanted to create an environment where no matter where you are, no matter when you left the show, whether or not you won, that if you had an interaction with me, you would be elevated and therefore, win in some capacity as you left.
That is awesome. And so what do you think it takes to win? Because to me, it seems like it takes luck in a way, because some people are just like randomly eliminated and it took no skills to be like not eliminated, you know?
Well, the whole question of winning is what exactly you win. Yes, there'll be one winner at the end, and there's probably different strategies to get there. One, you could be very quiet until you get to the later groups, which some people were able to do. You didn't see them until the other episodes only because they lay low, which might be good because you're not painting a target on your back. For me, I think I won because I showed up the way I did. Because when I was there, I was able to be the most authentic version of myself that I felt like people truly deeply connected with me. And I have friends and family members from the show that I'll know for a lifetime.
Yeah, I've noticed like through a lot of like Netflix shows, a lot of people talk about staying true to themselves and playing authentically. It seems like the name of the game for a lot of Netflix shows is basically being well liked by a lot of players. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think being well liked is a very good strategy. You might remember from the show when they were talking about who to eliminate at that point of time where we had to choose three people. And when somebody mentioned my name, he was like, yes, well liked, well known. But that also sort of puts a target on your back. We could even look throughout history where there were areas of fighting and disagreements where there's a voice of good that came up. I don't want to compare myself to a Martin Luther King or a Nelson Mandela, so to speak, but sometimes being a leader, sometimes stepping out will put a target on your back. How do I feel about that? I feel like if you have a belief of how you want the world to be, if you have a vision of how you want your reality to be, you have to continue to live with that mission. And I believe the more we put out the vibration of love, the more it's going to drown out the other. But what I learned from the show is the vibration of fear, of survival, spreads much, much quicker than the messages of love. And so that, in the future, we have to be much, much louder with our messages of love and unity to fight against the messages of scarcity, of fear, of hate, and of segregation.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned that you're still friends with a lot of people from the show. This filmed last year? Like, so who do you keep in touch with?
This was filmed in January of 2023, so earlier this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got a lot of friends there. Some of them didn't even make it through red light, green light, and were, on speaking terms. That's been great. So they weren't even featured at all. But of the ones that are featured, I do speak with Dan. He's the physician assistant who works on orthopedics, really well built. You can find him on Get After It Dads. Really, really a solid man with good integrity, there to be a dad. And we really, really connected while we were there. There's another player, Justin, who got eliminated off the cookie challenge. He's
Hmm.
actually also a leadership coach and leader, which is why we bonded and connected together. We're keeping in touch as well.
Tell us about the cookie challenge, because you got the hardest one, the umbrella. How stressful was that?
Well, when Spencer chose the umbrella for our group, I think, the whole group was feeling pretty stressed. One of the things I failed to do when walking in the room to meet Spencer, because you could see he was clearly stressed out, he was crying, but I think I was in my own survival mode because of that stressful moment that I didn't get a chance to just let him know things are okay. Uh, it was super stressful. We had a very short period of time to cut out a very intricate shape. And so my strategy was use as much saliva as possible to dissolve the cookie and then go in there and carve things out. And fortunately, I think my experience as a minimally invasive surgeon was able to command a little dexterity for me to be able to finish that challenge.
And I do have a question. Did you hear, like, have you talked to any players about the glass plank type challenge? Because I'm just very curious how far that drop was.
I have not actually talked to any players about the glass plank challenge. I can imagine it being very far for safety reasons. Netflix had done a great job making sure the safety of every player that's on the show is there. They actually do a great job keeping up with our emotional health after the show has been aired. When I heard from a fellow contestant, Trey, they actually spent several hours going over safety mechanisms of the glass bridge. So I could only imagine wherever the drop was pretty safe for the people participating.
Okay, good. Because I could just imagine like being very scared about the like floor beneath me, like just dropping. And it looked far, but I'm sure that was just like part of like the set or something like that. Do you have any other
That
key takeaways? Wait, say that again.
that was movie magic.
Yes, that's what I felt like. Do you have any other key takeaways you think the audience should take from the show?
I think the main takeaway from the show is what happens when we are stressed, when we're given decisions where we have to decide between our well-being, the well-being of other people. And I would probably say this, if we could focus on the things that truly allow us to be in what I call the thrive state, we could show up as ourselves and we could be proud of the decisions we end up making. And that involves getting good sleep, getting good nutrition, moving, monitoring your emotions and your thoughts, being in a sense of community of people that nurture you, and then also having that sense of purpose. Now, this is why I actually am so passionate about mental health. I put together a mental health summit called the Thrive State Summit. People could actually register for free at thrivestatesummit.com. I interview 50 of the world's thought leaders in mental and emotional wellness to get those tools to really master how we show up in the world, how we choose to make decisions that are more authentic to us, and so that we're not bogged down by the stresses in our finances, in our relationships, and our work.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I think I've learned a lot, and you've definitely have given me a lot to think about. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.